I'm so smart. Button. Okay, so welcome everybody. This is day 3 of the Lorenz workshop on the road to fair and equitable science. And what I will do is repost in the chat a link to the FAIR Mothership paper, a document. In there, you will find a link to the day 3 common notes if you want to follow along in all the details of the day today, the proceedings. What I'll do next is share with you my screen. These are notes that I took. Now, these notes are fresh off the press. I just sat through about an hour of reporting out from 6 different breakout groups. And maybe just to reiterate this again, I mentioned it yesterday, but what has happened in the course of the week so far is that we've identified 6 stakeholder communities: publishers, funders, policymakers, research performing organizations, data intensive industry and other service providers, and research infrastructures and repositories. And the idea is that our roadmap will directly address those stakeholders. And of course, this is a decade-long roadmap that will put out challenges and recommendations for things that these stakeholders can contribute to in the next 10 years to help realize, an infrastructure for fair data and services. And then also you may remember from yesterday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week is focused on special topics. Tuesday being machine actionability, Wednesday, today, being on access, so like data equitability and equitability of data access. And tomorrow, Thursday, will be a focus on FAIR and AI. So what you will hear about today are some roadmap items, certainly subject to change and revision over the next couple of days, but this is the thinking right now on roadmap items for equitability for these stakeholders.
Speaking of these stakeholders, is the order of this list significant?
Nope, it is, I would say, fairly randomly arranged. I think, having a lot of academics here, we tend to put the publishers and the funders up high in the list. If there's anything important for an academic, it's getting a grant from a funder and then publishing a paper with a publisher. So I think that's probably why they're at the top.
Publishers haven't actually been in the forefront of pushing for open science.
No, they haven't. But it's interesting now with the publishers we have in the room. What I hear is kind of like red alert, kind of super urgent emergency procedures are in place across the publishing industry because they are really being flooded with a tidal wave of these paper mill papers. So machine generated garbage that looks and reads like an authentic research article. And it's almost impossible to tell the forgeries from a bona fide research, documentation. And this is I think a bit of an existential crisis now for the publishing industry. And so, the silver lining there might be that there's an opportunity to upgrade the machine actionability and fairness levels within the industry. Maybe there's some attention to that now.
Well, there's 2 publishers in my experience, or my wishes, let's say. There's the traditional publishers who are copyright holders, and there's the hopefully publishers of the future who are service providers. And moving from one to the other, I would see as a important activity for us, and it might be hard to implement. but that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, and I think I would tend to agree with you, George, but it might be only because I'm in a fair bubble here at the Lorenz Center where we've invited, 55 of our closest friends. But we do have an assemblage of publishers here who seem to be early moving type organizations and quite interested in setting trends. So maybe we have a good collection of organizations here, but you're looking at a huge and enormously profitable industry. Any disturbance to that, I think, will be met with great resistance.
I think so too.
Yep. Okay, so let me take you through the list then of where we are at the end of the day here. So we have our publishers, Helen King, who's head of research transformation at Sage Publishers, as it would turn out, did the reporting out for her breakout group. And there was kind of a consensus in the group that fair data and services will deeply empower equitable access to human knowledge. That is taken as kind of a postulate here. And it's seen, I think, by the publishers as a good thing, obviously. Then their recommendations are an interest, actually, in nanopublication or nanopublication-like technology and developing that out for the purposes of publishers, starting with, for example, high-level metadata descriptions as nanopublications and making that freely available. But then really, over time, building that into the actual content of the research articles themselves and making research articles increasingly machine readable. But it's thought that, the fact that it's on this list means that it was thought in this group that nanopublications was a pathway to data and access equitability in the publishing industry. There was a reiteration from yesterday that the industry is looking for a trusted and neutral organization, that all the publishers, all the different companies, who might feel a competitive feeling towards each other, that they could look to neutral territory at an organization that might be the keeper of standards or specifications on that. They have, in fact, as I mentioned, this red hot use case, which is research integrity. They have to get a handle on authentication and verification of what they're getting. The content is now too easy to generate by a computer, and people are gaming the system at an unbelievable rate at the moment.
Eric,
Yeah.
let me comment there.
Yep.
I heard a presentation recently that pointed out it will never be possible to verify that something is illegal, but it should be possible to verify that something is legal. There should be procedures put in place where the submitter of a real paper, let's say, can go through some process that guarantees it is a legal thing.
Well, that was part of the discussion. I didn't capture it here, bring it in here, but indeed, and it even goes down to having, let's say, very rich provenance metadata chains, of course, all of that machine actionable, that would actually validate, give bona fides for the actual research process itself. So were these experiments really done? Where were they done? Who paid for them? Who were the technicians running the machines? Who was the data analyst? There's no reason why that kind of information, in principle, cannot be captured in a machine actionable way. And I think the industry is looking, like this is going to be the only way to publish.
But maybe an electronic watermark of some sort might help simplify the problem.
Well, and let's come back to this because there's actually an interesting connection with the funders because they have a similar interest here, and there's maybe synergies between these groups as well. The publishers mentioned some educational components, not only to say, researchers and customers, libraries, but an education program among the industry members themselves. So some leading publishers might actually have a communication channel or training channel for other fellow publishers to build up this awareness and knowledge within the industry. So that's a roadmap item, right? They're seeing that as a priority. And then at the end, Byron was clever enough to say, well, what about getting a critical mass of publishers together who might collectively, sign on to this and make a movement and therefore challenge the rest of the industry partners to move in this direction. So that was thought to be a good idea. But let's jump to the funders. And of course, Margreet Bloemer, she's our representative of a Dutch funding agency here, and she's been a champion of all kinds of fair things over the years. She reported out. One of the things this group was looking at was that funders should ensure fair equitability, that part of the mandate of a science funder would be to set requirements and standards that would make data equitable at the end. And I should mention, by the way, this idea of equitability, we spent the whole morning defining what that means and making it as operational as possible, and making it something that could be validated in a fair way. So there's a lot that goes into the word equitability here. We spent the whole morning on that. The funders thought that they need actually an equitability framework. They need to have definitions and specifications around what we mean by that. And this could be, for example, then translated into metadata schema that could help to, validate the equitability of these scientific outputs. That in turn would lead to a way to actually define and measure and then validate equitability. And then again, Byron stepped in and said, well, what about a critical mass of funders? Because right now this was kind of from the perspective of, a funding agency should do this, but why not have kind of a group of funders who might embrace some approaches that are compatible? And then the point of synergy here, George, would be, for example, that by developing a system, a framework for equitability and funding, that metadata could actually become a requirement for the publishers. So the publishers and the funders might actually work together to mandate proof of equitability in these research outputs according to some schema. And we were thinking in the room that it's interesting enough to have these different stakeholder communities write a roadmap for their own constituencies, but if we even were able to harness some components between these stakeholders, that maybe you get accelerated exponential uptake of these things. I'll move on to the policy then. Simon Hudson reported out. Yep.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Do you mind comments along the way, or should I just?
Please, George, absolutely. If anyone has comments, just let me know. We can take it as we go. Yep.
I'm glad that this is a decadal goal, because I'm thinking of the independent federal agencies in the US, and it will take a decade for them to agree on a common standard.
Yeah. Indeed, I'm a little bit relieved that we're looking at a decade as well for this. And even if you make a lot of progress in the first couple of years, that dissemination of that would probably take a lot longer. Even if you had great ideas, it might take a while for it to sink in. As far as the policy goes, there was this idea that good policy could make fair data, but also the fair implementation of that data more equitable.